The previous ayah said, why can't you understand? Why can't you use your mind? Or don't you understand? The next ayah says, here's why you don't understand. Because your hearts are all gone. ثُمَّ قَسَتْ قُلُوبُكُمْ. Your hearts became hard. Hearts became hard because they saw a dead guy come back to life. If anything is supposed to melt your heart, that should be it. Even that didn't work. If that didn't bring you to guidance, then there's nothing else that can be done for you. Your hearts became hard. مِن بَعْدِ ذَلِكَ. Even after that. فَهِيَ كَالْحِجَارَةِ. Then they became like stones. أَوْ أَشَدُّ قَسْوَةً. Or they became even tougher, worse in terms of their stiffness. وَإِنَّ مِنَ الْحِجَارَةِ لَمَا يَتَفَجَّرُ مِنْهُ الْأَنْهَارِ. Even out of stones there are those that rip open, that burst open, and rivers come from them. Rivers burst out of them. You know, the stones that are going to be talked about in this ayah isn't actually a conversation about stones. It's about people. 3 kinds of stones will be mentioned, and it's actually a parable of 3 kinds of hearts. 3 kinds of hearts are compared with 3 kinds of stones. You know, for a person who is intellectual, they're a thinker. When the Qur'an is presented to them, they think about it immediately. And when they think about it, they come to their conclusions very quickly. If they have decency in them, the process is very quick. When a person is distracted in life, even if they're a good person, but they're distracted in life, they're in the middle of a lot of stuff, you can't get their attention just by talking to them. Something has to happen that shakes them up, that gets their attention. Otherwise, you can't get their attention. Now what happens is, in this ayah, Allah talks about a rock that just bursts open, and rivers come out of it. It's like the heart of Abu Bakr, radiallahu anhu. The potential iman, water in this ayah is faith. Water is iman itself, faith itself. When the message is presented to him, the water was so much already inside, you basically barely had to tap it, and what happened? This iman just came out. There's no time taken for him to accept Islam. With Umar, the next kind of heart, Umar is not the interpretation, it's a sample of the next kind of heart. There's other people that can have that kind of heart. Distracted by stuff. The only way you can really get their attention is to rattle them. How does Abu Bakr as-Siddiq or Umar ibn al-Khattab come to Islam? You know the story, right? It's a traumatic experience. He hit his sister. He sees blood drip down her lip, and then he's like shaken by that. And at that moment, he has the attention of the Qur'an. At that moment. Had the Qur'an been written or given to him at a time where he wasn't paying attention like that, it wouldn't have had an effect. You know? And there's other stories in the case of Umar. He was shaken before too. Literally shaken. He was hiding behind the ghilaf of the Kaaba, the cover of the Kaaba, at night time. He was going to jump the Prophet and beat him up. The Prophet was praying. He started listening to the recitation, and he said, this is some amazing poetry. That's beautiful. And the Prophet was reciting, وَمَا هُوَ بِقَوْلِ شَاعِرٍ. It's not the word of a poet. How little you believe. He says, well, how do you know what I was thinking? He must be a mind reader. وَمَا هُوَ بِقَوْلِ كَاهِنٍ قَلِيلًا مَا تَذَكَّرُونَ. It's not the word of a mind reader. How does he know that? What is it? تَنْزِيلٌ مِّن رَبِّ الْعَالَمِينَ. A revelation from the Master of all nations. He ran away. He got shaken up. He didn't become Muslim, he ran away, he got scared. You know, he was just shaken by it. There are some people who will come to Islam from an intellectual journey. Some will come to Islam after a car accident, after surgery, after losing a child, after something traumatic. They're going to come to Islam after almost dying by disease. They're going to come to Islam because they lost a friend. Something happened. Something that shook them up happened. You know? And these are 2 different kinds of hearts. So the second kind of heart, Allah says, وَإِنَّ مِنْهَا لَمَا يَشَّقَّقُ فَيَخْرُجُ مِنْهُ الْمَاءُ. Out of the hearts there are ones that crack open and water comes out. It doesn't open on its own. It has to be hit, and then it cracks open. Something has to shake it, and guess what? You'll still find water in there. This is very important for us to understand. You know why? Sometimes we meet people, you want to give them da'wah, or you want to give them advice, even in your own family. There's a cousin who doesn't want to hear it from you. You know, there's your brother, your sister, your uncle, whoever, and they just don't want to hear it from you, and you feel like their heart is really hard, but you don't know there may be water inside. It just takes the right kind of event to crack it open. You know what I'm saying? So there are some people, you can't just talk to them and expect results. They take their time. How many years? You have to ask yourself, how many years before Hamza radiallahu anhu, how many years before Umar radiallahu anhu became Muslim? Do you know? 6 years. 6 years since the message began,
You have to ask yourself, what are they doing for 6 years? You know, they're not enemies of Islam, which is interesting. Umar bin al-Khattab only became an advocate, enemy of Islam, right before he came to Islam. You know, when things reached a boiling point. So what's he doing the other 5.5 years? He's hanging out. He's doing stuff. He's busy with life.
When you look at it, you think there can't be any water in that one. Not in Umar. He's going to be a Muslim? Come on. Seriously? That guy? Do you know what he does? He's going to be Muslim. And then when that heart is shaken, Iman comes out of there too. But then there's a third kind of heart. وَإِنَّ مِنْهَا لَمَا يَهْبِطُ مِنْ خَشْيَةِ اللَّهِ. Even out of them, there are those that fall from the fear of Allah. They fall from the fear of Allah. Allah mentions rocks that are falling like a landslide. You know how the picture of a landslide where rocks are falling? But He doesn't mention any water this time. The first two kinds of hearts, there were water. One more water than the other. But the third one, there was no water. What Allah is talking about is Islam without Iman. Islam without Iman. Iman is represented by what in this example? Water. When there's no water mentioned, but it still has the fear of Allah, it's submitting. It's falling from the fear of Allah, like a man falling in sajda from the fear of Allah. Like the rock falls from the fear of Allah. But he may not have tasted Iman yet. There is such a thing as having Islam without Iman. Having become Muslim, coming to the faith without tasting the sweetness in your heart. Maybe your mind has submitted. Your intellect has submitted to this mission or this belief, but your heart hasn't tasted its sweetness yet. And when the heart tastes its sweetness, you'll shed tears. It'll tell. Your mind doesn't make you cry, your heart does. Right? So Allah says, قَالَتِ الْأَعْرَابُ آمَنَّا قُلْ لَمْ تُؤْمِنُوا وَلَكِنْ قُولُوا أَسْلَمْنَا. But when say they have faith, tell them, no, you don't have faith, you've accepted Islam. وَلَمَّا يَدْخُلِ الْإِيمَانُ فِي قُلُوبِكُمْ. Iman hasn't entered your hearts yet. This water hasn't entered your rocks yet. That's what that is. Interestingly, the ayah began, your hearts were so hard, they were even worse than rock. Then Allah talked about 3 kinds of rock. 3 kinds of rock represent 3 kinds of hearts. 3 kinds of hearts that have hope, that have potential.